We've got some 275 names, and they are from all over the country.
Varied backgrounds, education?
Varied background. Most of them are in the field of education, but we do have a number that are not presently in the educational world.
Well, Rick, tonight was the scheduled Auburn report on the Skyriders Tour, the SEC Skyriders Tour, but that was those plans were changed.
A little bit of a delay, Bob. As reported earlier, of course, memorial services for Auburn football player Greg Pratt were held this afternoon in Auburn in conjunction with funeral services in Pratt's hometown of Albany, Georgia. Auburn players and coaches attended the services in Albany. Due to their absence on campus, the last stop on the SEC Skyriders Tour had to be delayed for a day. Therefore, our Skyriders, Phil Snow and Vic Irving, are on hold in Auburn. Phil is standing by live now on the plains to give us an update as the tour winds down. Phil?
Okay, Rick, as you said, today was the day we were supposed to look at Auburn, but the tragedy of last Saturday ended all that. By the way, the Auburn team on 2 buses has just returned to the campus in Sewell Hall over behind me here for the evening. We'll get a look at them tomorrow as the schedule now stands. First, though, let's, before we comment some on this SEC Skyriders Tour, get a look at our Tuesday stop in Nashville and our impressions of the Vanderbilt Commodores. What's SEC football coming to? So that was the way it looked in Vanderbilt, Rick.
Phil, who's been the most impressive team so far on your Skyriders Tour?
Well, I'd have to say that we saw LSU yesterday, and they look very good. If they get their quarterback situation worked out, they'll be a contender again, as they were last year. And most impressed with Alabama's practice. They, of course, have the new staff with Ray Perkins, yet they had a very good practice. They were kind of low-key. It looked very much organized. In fact, one of the older writers, even older than myself, who covered Georgia Tech a few years ago, said it reminded him of one of those Bobby Dodd practices. So you can take that for what it's worth.
Okay, Phil, we'll look forward to your report from LSU tonight and Auburn tomorrow. Thanks again, Phil Snow, live reporting from Auburn. Well, it's hard to...
resources. And I can think of no more pleasant way to spend. Beard chapter for active church service, which includes a Employee of the Year award for 1983 in District 9. Congratulations. Thank you.
My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Chills still race through civil rights attorney Solomon C.'s body every time he hears that voice.
Ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee.
I don't believe that this country is going to produce another leader in my lifetime of the quality of Dr. King.
Attorney C didn't join the massive crowd of blacks and whites in Washington the day Dr. Martin Luther King delivered that fiery freedom speech to America.
From every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city.
Attorney C was busy in Montgomery, contributing to the same cause Dr. King fought for. And he isn't going to Washington tomorrow. He'll still be in Alabama, still fighting for the cause.
We've succeeded in getting the laws off the books, you see. But a whole lot hasn't changed. We've got a Title VII Equal Employment Opportunity Act. But one just has to look at the unemployment figures and know that there's something wrong, even though you've got an Equal Employment Opportunity Act.
Dr. King lobbied for jobs and freedom in his dream 20 years ago. C says it hasn't come true yet.
Discrimination has gotten to be sophisticated, ingenious, subtle, more mental, emotional than physical, and thus, in my opinion, more damaging.
We'll be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
When Craig Field closed in 1977, it became something like a modern-day ghost town. Empty buildings competed with weeds, while Selma city officials and others fought to reclaim the land for industry and housing.
You can fill that place up with industry out there. It's going to take some hard work. And the industrial dollar certainly will need more than the military dollar for it.
And this is Craig Field today, home of several businesses like Beechcraft Airplanes and the Alabama Criminal Justice Training Center. Just what Mayor Joe Smitherman hoped for.
Craig is really coming along. We've gotten it all back to house.
In fact, Craig has been growing almost since the day it closed. Housing here has opened up now and families are moving in. So while the Navy is welcome here, Joe Pilcher of the Craig Field Airport and Industrial Authority says it won't mean many changes.
I doubt that it would have any substantial employment impact. The real impact, I think, might be in the availability of federal funding to upgrade the airport itself.
City officials say it may take another 5 or 10 years, but one day Craig Field may be as busy as it ever was. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News at Craig Field. Since it closed in 1977, some parts of Craig Field have been like a modern-day ghost town, a maze of empty buildings overgrown with weeds. While many parts of Craig Field are still abandoned, there has been considerable progress in other areas. Businesses have popped up all over the airbase-turned industrial complex, and housing that's been vacant for years is now being put to use.
Craig is really coming along.
Selma Mayor Joe Smitherman says if the Navy planes come back, they'll be welcome.
In no way would this Navy operation affect the industries out there. No way would it be on the scale that the military base was. But
the Navy planes, if they come here at all, aren't expected to bring many jobs, probably fewer than a dozen. Still, city officials are very optimistic about this old airfield and say one day, maybe 5 or 10 years from now, it'll be as busy as it ever was. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News at Craig Field.
About the child who's hyperactive. The questions about the child who can't concentrate really fall. Can't or won't concentrate may fall into the same ballpark as disorder in terms of the running away.
It's wonderful. There's a lot of heartaches, but there's more blessings. You can talk to any foster parent here today, and they can tell you that it's got more good times than bad times. Well, I'm glad you brought
attention deficit disorder. Now, all of this has to be compared with the other children his age. That is, he acts before or without thinking. The other characteristic is in comparison with others his age. All of this has concentration. He sits there and he passively absorbs of the other team. And I tell you why they put me out. I told you to repeat this back to me.
Right now, it's looking dim. We've been told that the money is going to have to be appropriated through legislation, again, for foster care if we're expecting an increase. So that means that foster parents are going to have to start working with the legislators in their own county, and we're going to have to go back to Capitol Hill to get more money appropriated.
What's it like? Room for one more. Foster parenting aspirant.
Who's hyperactive. The questions about the child who can't concentrate really fall. The parent can't or won't concentrate may fall into the same ballpark as the child who's hyperactive.
The report cites the university for 174 violations of the bid law and for not properly and accurately providing information requested by examiners. According to the examiners, the violations occurred between October 1st, 1980 and September 30th, 1981. Some examples of the alleged violations include $10,000 worth of janitorial supplies not let on bids, $9,000 in smoke detectors and other electrical supplies purchased and not bid, and $5,000 in diesel fuel bought but not bidded out. Examiners reported that university officials would properly let a bid on one item, but would later buy additional items for the same purpose from the same company and not bid them. Examiners criticized tax agreements between the university and contractors doing business with the school. Contractors would be given sales and use tax exemptions for all equipment purchased for jobs the contractors did for the school. The examiner said this arrangement created losses for local, county, and state governments in tax revenue. The examiners recommended, number one, that the bid law be followed. Number two, that future requests for audit information be furnished in a timely and accurate manner. And number three, that adding items to bids already closed be discontinued. Walt Dinsmore, director of the university's Business Services Office, issued this statement today, and I'm quoting, "The university makes every effort to maximize savings to the institution through its purchasing practices." Dinsmore goes on further to say, "We feel we are operating within state bid requirements as interpreted by University Council and would welcome the opportunity to compare the success and standards of our purchase activity with any other state agency or institution," end quote. Dinsmore adds that the university will respond to the report shortly. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting.
When these doors and others like them open bright and early Monday morning, Montgomery School Superintendent Henry Adair says everything will be ready to admit 31,000 students at 50 schools. Mr. Adair says school officials haven't been idle during the summer. A lot of fixing and cleaning up has been going on. Most of that work has been on a $3 million asbestos removal program.
This summer we've been able to complete some 17 of the 24 sites where we had asbestos. I believe that we still have 11 buildings that will have to have asbestos removed at some future time.
The only potential problem, Mr. Adair says, is the heat. Most of the system schools aren't air conditioned, and if temperatures remain above 100, there could be problems.
In fact, all of our principals and teachers will be very sensitive to heat stress and to do what they can to relieve this as best they can.
Still, the superintendent is looking forward to a good school year. The system will be able to handle more kindergarten students thanks to the state legislature, and Mr. Adair is also grateful to the legislature that came up with an education budget with level funding. That means no proration for the first time in 4 years. Lois Russell, WSFA TV News.
Well, everything that I've seen so far, Phil, has been positive. I don't know how the tragic loss of Greg Pratt is going to the long-range effect it will have on us. I know it's been very difficult to deal with it during the past week, but it was the best conditioned football team this time of year that I've ever been around.
Donnie Humphrey, a preseason All-American last year, will have to battle for playing time this season with two highly regarded defensive tackles, Doug Smith and Ben Thomas. Donnie's coming back from knee surgery.
Oh, it's in real good shape right now. You know, I know this afternoon we started contact, but other than that, it's been real good to me.
You've been able to do everything you want to do.
Yeah.
The tragic death of Greg Pratt leaves no experience at the fullback position, but Lionel James is not worried.
Tom Agee, you know, he was a big surprise in the spring. They moved Collis Campbell to running back, Cal Collins. You know, we're getting some depth at running back. You know, they're all great and they're all strong, and they're determined to do the best that they can, and, you know, the coaches are going to push them in order for them to get better.
Auburn secondary, all inexperienced except David King at cornerback, possesses great talent that was easy to see. Now the question is, can they perform when it counts? That question will be answered September 10th when Southern Miss visits Jordan-Hare Stadium.
Throughout Alabama, the farm community is coping with much higher than normal temperatures, and in many sections it's been weeks since life-giving rains have come. The heat seems to be especially acute for livestock and poultry. Cattle are trying to keep cool by standing in the shade or in ponds and creeks. That means they don't eat properly and they lose valuable weight. Chickens are unable to handle 100-degree plus temperatures. These birds are doing what's called hassling, literally gasping for air. In spite of the use of every known technique for keeping them cool, including styrofoam insulation in the poultry house, sprayers which put out a fine mist of water, and huge fans to circulate the air. At Montgomery's Sylvester Poultry Company, manager Carl Watson says birds arriving for processing are kept cooler by misters and fans, but it's not enough.
Regardless of what we do, we're still losing a lot of birds. This company lost in excess of 50,000 birds this past weekend.
Already in the last week, well over 500,000 chickens have died in the Alabama heat. Although some parts of the state have seen steady rainfall most of the summer and their crops are in good shape, thunderstorms have been isolated. Peanuts in southeast Alabama are not filling out like they should. Corn is burned up on the stalk, and soybean pods are empty. North Alabama is especially hard hit.
We fixed to get a good rain. There's no doubt about it.
On Tuesday, Limestone County farmer Jerry Newby thought his cotton was going to receive its first moisture since July 15th. It didn't. The storm merely tossed out a few enticing drops and moved on. Newby's cotton is so stressed that bolls are already opening a full month before they're supposed to.
What we've got here is not worth anything.
Jerry Newby's brother Jimmy says the drought has severely cut back on the amount of silage the farm will produce to feed the family's dairy herd. The alfalfa on the left should be knee-high, and the silage on the right should be lush and waist-high. The Newby's cows are not eating properly because of the heat, and milk production on their dairy has dropped 20%. The Newbys say their problems with the weather will not put them under. They'll make it this year. But the president of Alabama Farm Bureau Federation, dairyman and soybean producer Goodwin Myrick, says damage will easily run past $100 million, and some farmers who are already in trouble won't be able to make it. The government's payment-in-kind program and the crops being lost to the heat all over the Sun Belt will lower supplies of grain and result in higher prices being paid to farmers for their commodities. But as one farmer put it, when you don't have anything to sell, who cares what the price is up to? Holly Midgley reporting from Montgomery.
Sat around on the beach and they just toured and they looked
sites, and then they came back home, and on the first morning, on surfing, she said, "You what?" And she said, "You are crazy. You can't preach on surfing." Great. And I want to share a few issues with you. There is more social stigma of the drunken woman or the drug-using woman. There are more problems for a woman who's trying to go off to treatment, who may very well be a single parent because her husband would not tolerate her continued alcohol and drug use. Whereas the reverse, where the husband's the alcoholic, the wives often get economically caught up in it and stay around long enough maybe to be of some help. Rolled into the pulpit. I mean, he was turned up, turned on, turned loose, turned over, motivated. He was anointed. He was on fire. He preached.
Very easy to abuse. We have, I'm sure most of you out here have been first sergeant at one time and know that from time to time you have done your buddy up.
The two meetings being conducted, one is for commanders of battalion and higher Army Guard organizations in the state. The other is for administrative officers who are the senior full-time technicians and the command sergeants major in each of these organizations. They are in Montgomery this weekend for status briefings by the Adjutant General, General Hornsby, the principal members of his staff. This is to get down points of emphasis for the upcoming training year and to get all of the information out to the commanders and these AOs and command sergeant majors firsthand.
If we're not fit to be mobilized, then we're not going to be fit. Close to the 6 months over there, if it becomes obvious that that person is not going to be able to return to military duty. So
yeah, we're on Woodley Road going north. Yeah, well, if you're on Woodley Road going north, you're across Narrow Lane Road.
And here we see each other eyeball to eyeball. A lot of people come to see the new equipment, and we have equipment dealers here, and we have a flea market. The flea market is everybody brings their junk, so to speak. It's spelled with Q-U-E, and they rent the tables from us and exchange it and display it and what have you.
Dexter Avenue in Montgomery has seen a lot of history. Now a little of that history is coming back to an office on Dexter, the Alabama Pharmaceutical Association. It may not look like much now, but this is the start of a museum.
Hopefully they'll be looking at a 1930 museum, which will be a replica of a pharmacy from that time.
Spokesperson Linda Bernowski says the association kicked off the idea 2 years ago. Since then, they've been busy pulling together artifacts from all over the state. Old apothecary jars, balances, a cash register, even a stack of old prescriptions. Everything needed to recreate the world of the old-time pharmacist.
At the turn of the century, pharmacists were compounding all of their prescriptions, and today most of the people will go in and the pharmacist will just be dispensing the medications. He's more interested today with side effects and adverse drug reactions. Back then, he was interested in almost diagnosing.
There's still a lot of work to be done before the museum opens early next year. Wood has to be refinished, the ceiling has to be covered with tin. In all, the project will cost about $50,000. A lot of money? Maybe so, but maybe not so much for a piece of history. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Dubbed Caffeine Coals because he's so energetic, Michael is a co-founder of the Great American Chocolate Chip Cookie Company, and today he stopped by his Eastdale Mall store after 400 miles on a bicycle seat.
We left Savannah yesterday at the courthouse at 12:02, so we're doing real well. Last year when I set the record, this was I left Montgomery on my 4th day, and I'll actually be leaving Montgomery a little over 1 day this year, so I'm going to shatter the record. I'm sure I'll do it easily under 10 days this year.
Michael currently holds the record for the Savannah-San Diego trek. He did it in 15 days last June. He rides a $2,000 custom-made Italian cycle and wears a white spandex suit to reflect the heat. His entourage follows him in 2 vans. His crew consists of his wife, 2 mechanics, a chiropractor, a cycling judge, cook, and masseuse. But Michael isn't just riding to break a world record. In 1977, after a motorcycle accident, doctors told him he would never walk unaided again.
It'll focus a lot more attention to a much bigger group of people that rehabilitating is possible, even when doctors tell you that it's not.
This year alone, he's put 15,000 miles on his bike. Not bad for a guy who's supposed to be using walking canes. Lisa Walsh, WSFA TV News.
The history books will say that today's march was peaceful, but parts of it definitely were not. Today's rally was not spontaneous, not surprising. Like the one 20 years ago, this was staged to commemorate.
Like all of the big freedom movements of our time, the struggles for civil rights began small. They weren't all big media spectacles like this. Too often, in the effort to make each gathering bigger and better than the last one, we forget where it all began.
It all began in the Deep South, in towns like Selma, Alabama in 1965, protests that led to the Voting Rights Act. But even then, the civil rights movement is accused of setting a stage, much like a movie producer would. Just ask the mayor of Selma.
Selma was picked because it was a typical southern town. It was small enough he could, with his marches and nonviolent demonstrations, he could paralyze the whole city and get the publicity from the national news media, which he had to have. And yet it was large enough to offer him the protection he had. But
today in Washington, 3,200 policemen offered protection, hundreds of camera crews the publicity, and they even came from San Francisco.
This is something that we should do to let them know that there are needs, still needs.
But there are those who will see this march as merely symbolic, coming at a time when civil rights has had its day, another time an Alabama policeman remembers well.
I feel like they've accomplished what they wanted to accomplish. I don't feel like they have anything to march for at this period of time.
Polly Kreisman, WSFA TV News, Washington.
What do you think about Auburn or Alabama? Who do you pick this year?
Yay, Auburn, of course.
Why?
I'm for the underdog. We're going to be the overdog.
I'm here in Alabama. Alabama is my team, so, that's who I'm for.
Can you tell them what your favorite team is? You can't tell them. Say Fort Deposit Academy.
Fort Deposit Academy.
Can you tell them why? Can you tell them who the coach is?
My daddy's the coach.
Okay.
I like New York. They're my team.
Oh, Braves are my team. I like them.
Right now, I had to go between Auburn and Alabama. I put Auburn first because we got 2 men out of town playing up there from the Greenman High School, Tom Powell, which is a sophomore up there, and he's supposed to be starting in the secondary this year. And Alvin Bridge, a freshman going up there, he hopes to make the team play wide receiver.
I want to thank all of you folks for having helped me be your governor. I've been your friend ever since I've been in the legislature. As long as I'm governor of Alabama, I'll still be your friend here, IBEW and the working people of Alabama. Thank you very much.
Do that day of the signing of the charter member of apply, believe that labor is on the right side.
There you go. That's pretty straight.
At this time, we're going to
Alabama is one of 20 states in the country with the right-to-work law, a law that Kerry Knott of the Right-to-Work Committee says is absolutely essential.
Well, the right-to-work law has helped the state in a number of ways. One way we believe is it has provided a basic freedom to Alabama's workers. No one since 1953 has had to pay dues just to earn a living for his family.
The Right-to-Work Committee was formed earlier this year just to protect the law.
Also, it has helped the state's business climate a great deal. A lot of people don't realize, but a number of companies refuse to consider moving to a state that does not have a right-to-work law.
However, others say the right-to-work law doesn't help workers, but hurts their ability to bargain with employers.
The only thing we have to say about the right to work is it's got the wrong name. It should be the right to work for less.
Can the right-to-work law hurt workers as well as help them?
I don't believe there's any way possible that the right-to-work law could hurt workers.
Mr. Knott says his group fears the right-to-work law is in real danger of being repealed or weakened, so he'll be fighting hard to make friends in the legislature. There are clear indications, though, others would like to see the law's 30th birthday be its last. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
But the crackdown in Florida is resulting in more of it being brought into this area. Of course, where in the past it was brought in on larger aircraft, DC-4s, DC-6s, the group that's bringing in the marijuana, a lot of this has been reduced to smaller loads, a ton on a small twin-engine aircraft, which would not raise any suspicion if it landed at a small airport at night, where a DC-6 would.
The two largest drug busts in Alabama's history occurred this year. The first was in Dothan, the second in Montgomery. Both the confiscated planes were twin-engine crafts, and the arrests weren't a result of massive undercover operations. In each incident, airport personnel notified police simply because the pilots and crew were acting suspiciously. Not only are alert citizens responsible for the two coke busts, they've also been responsible for notifying troopers of many of the 378 marijuana plots found in 47 Alabama counties this year. Since February, troopers have destroyed more than $26 million worth of marijuana.
We encourage anyone who knows of any operation like this, large or small, that we have the anonymous helpline, 1-800-392-8011, where anyone can call toll-free, anonymously, to report these type of gross or any type of smuggling operation.
Lieutenant Smith says most of the fields found have been small plots in forested areas because large marijuana fields are so easily spotted from the air. Alabama doesn't use the federally licensed weed killer paraquat to kill the plants. Instead, law officials cut and burn the weeds. Lisa Walsh, WSFA TV News.
Well, I noticed looking at it.
With what's happened?
I am pleased. It's you're never completely pleased with collective bargaining. It's the nature of the beast that both parties give and take. It shows out that our strike was well worth the effort. Our people, once they are able to have the contract provisions, the new ones explained to them, I think will be impressed by it and will ratify the contract.
General Cleveland says things are looking up for the U.S. Armed Forces after several years of suffering through bare-bones budgets. Although the Reagan administration has increased defense spending, General Cleveland takes issue with those who blame the economic and social woes of the country on the military budget.
We, our nation, are expending $215 billion on defense. And if you could believe everything you read, you say, well, that whole increase must have come out of social spending. No, not true. Social spending this year is $415 billion.
General Cleveland told the Rotarians not to expect much out of the Geneva negotiations between the Soviets and the U.S. over nuclear weapons. He says the Soviets are ahead of the U.S. and they know what they want.
They have two aims. One is to split, the United States from its Western allies, and 2 is to prevent the modernization of the United States strategic forces.
Don Phelps on the military beat.
We'll read that Mr. Andropov offers to destroy Soviet missiles, or he proposes this.
This letter from ASU trustee Vice Chairperson Patsy Parker outlines the problem as she sees it. Parker tells Randolph he misled the board and implies he's done it more than once. One of those incidents concerned contracts for a job to be filled by Dot Moore, Montgomery's Democratic Party chairperson. Randolph says the Moore job was advertised as prescribed by law. His business affairs director says he wasn't.
That position was not advertised.
Another issue which prompted the Parker letter involves this man, Dr. Archie Moore, who was recently demoted from dean to a classroom teacher. Moore says Randolph told board members he was satisfied with the demotion and reduction in pay.
The president assured them that I was made satisfied in what my new duties and assignments would be, that I was pleased about it.
But what was the case? Were you pleased?
No.
Another matter where there seems to be some confusion with Randolph's version and the staff member's account concerns staffer Charles Varner. Randolph is alleged to have told the trustees that Varner had agreed to a demotion.
He knows that fully. I know it fully. The Vice President of Academic Affairs knows it. His chairman of the department knows it. I don't understand what he might have told the board. I was not privy to his conversations.
I spoke to a longtime member of the Board of Trustees, and he says that you misled the board in the Archie Moore incident.
No, I did not. This was discussed at least 6 or 8 months ago when I told them that I would like to combine 2 deanships. That is the deanship that Dr. Moore holds and the deanship of graduate studies, and I explained it fully.
In this Dorothy Moore situation, apparently you told him that she had a 3-month contract.
And she does.
When in fact she had 2 contracts. This is what trustees tell me.
That's right.
Can you tell me why you didn't tell the board she had?
I had simply forgotten about the 2nd contract, as I said in my letter.
Is that normal for somebody in your position to forget something that's important?
I think when you're talking about over 500 employees and contracts that come across a desk daily, I think it's quite natural that sometimes you forget something.
Randolph says whenever there's change, problems appear, and that's what's happening at ASU. But he also says the problems are being worked out. One member of the Board of Trustees told TV 12 he and other board members find Randolph to be, and I'm quoting now, untrustworthy. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting.
I actually looked at a number of people.
Did you ask?
It's about time. That's what these workers say about getting off the picket line and back up the telephone pole, repairing lines. Work backed up during the strike, installations, repairs, new service orders, and today these service reps began catching up.
I'll be glad to do that. And then my name is Frances Zorn. If you should need to check on this order, just give us a call, and I'll be glad to.
And in the areas where we're behind, we're at work now to reduce that backlog, and it should be middle of the week. We'll be caught up everywhere.
What about money? Strikers walked a picket line for 3 weeks with no salary. CWA local president Lloyd Nix says many of the union members are feeling a financial crunch, and in some cases won't get a full paycheck for 2 weeks. Who will pay for the increased salaries? Mr. Somerville says the phone company will have to ask for rate increases in the future to cover the new contract, so it's Bell South customers who will pick up the tab. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
In 1982, Congress passed the Nuclear Waste Policy Act to provide a program to dispose of spent nuclear fuel. The disposal was to be funded at a cost of $1 mil per kilowatt hour of electricity generated through nuclear facilities, which in Alabama was collected through the Energy Cost Recovery Rate. Last week, a 4-member monitor team from the Public Service Commission and officials of Alabama Power Company found a change in the federal program had resulted in a $20 million overpayment by the utility.
Now, after the federal government is paid, based on the new law, there is $20 million in excess that is available to be channeled back through ECR to Alabama Power Company's customers.
Alabama Power Company has been operating under a reduced energy cost recovery factor since September of last year, and Mr. Sullivan says he's optimistic the lower rate will remain in force.
I would anticipate that the lower millage rate for energy cost recovery would remain at 14.38 mils in lieu of going back up to the 17.88 mils. This is what we anticipate, and of course this is what the Commission hopes for.
But officials point out the $3.50 reduction in September and October is a one-time break on power bills.
Help keep things straight. Now, I heard you said you couldn't do nothing about the hiring teacher.
Alabama. You and I had talked on the same subject. You said a permit was not valid. If the mayor and the city council will give to the citizens of Eufaula what we put before him today, I think that we can bring an end to the boycott of Eufaula, Alabama.
The court system has already exonerated our officers. They've not been found guilty. There was not sufficient evidence that they would even be carried to a trial court.
We appreciate that very much, and thank you so much for talking to us. Is that yours? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
It matters. With all of Montgomery working together, we can have a better.
I, Will H. Belser, Jr., am actively seeking council seat 6, that's District 6. And when elected, I will work, first of all, for racial harmony.
Well, I feel that the meeting was very productive and that some good came out of it. And we were all able to have our own say, and I think the mayor listened very attentively. And I really feel that he showed in many ways that he was concerned with a lot of the items that we presented to him.
We would certainly be delighted to employ more blacks, especially more blacks on the police department. But first of all, we must have applicants who can qualify, who can pass the test and can carry out the procedure.
But money has never been the main issue in the CWA walkout, nor was it the main reason for agreeing to the new contract. Local President Lloyd Nix says overall he's satisfied with the contract, even though there are some parts not in the best interest of the workers.
South Central Bell, Miss Arnett. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Today, telephone workers got back on the job, and it was business as usual, only a lot busier. Things got backed up during the strike, and now these service reps and repairmen are playing catch-up. With this new contract and salary increases of 5.5% for senior employees, the question of who will pay is raised.
This contract settlement, of course, would be reflected in future rate activity, but simply because it will mean additions to our operating expenses, and it won't solely be the reason for rate activity, but it will be reflected in future rate activity, yes.
Mr. Somerville says he expects things to be back to normal by the middle of the week. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Of the 3 council members on the salary committee, 2 want to come up with more money for police officers and firefighters right now. 1 prefers to wait until next year. Council President Willie Peake and Councilman Donald Watkins see a strong need to boost these salaries. Councilman Bud Chambers sees no need and basically no problem with salaries as they are. In short, the 3 people assigned to study police and fire department salaries can agree and may not be able to pull it all together by tomorrow night's council meeting. That's when the budget for fiscal year 1984 comes up for discussion. It does include a 4% pay hike for all city employees, but Mr. Peake and Mr. Watkins want something extra in there for police officers and firefighters. They say they worry about attracting and keeping quality officers. Whether the 2 are successful may depend on convincing other council members to postpone action on the budget for a week. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
Ignore the more important issues of improving the quality of life for all of Montgomery's citizens. It's just 17 years now until we'll be dating our May 40-some-odd years marriage. She'd rather admit that, though, than admit she got a son about 42 years old.
The first picture in the 5-page article is a symbol of what America may always remember of George Corley Wallace, the famous stand in the schoolhouse door. That was in June 1963, when a young Governor Wallace, regarded then as a segregationist, sought to bar 2 blacks from enrolling in the University of Alabama. And he stood on the steps of the state capitol in January of that same year while taking the oath of office, vowing words blacks may always remember: segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever.
But times have changed, and many, including the governor himself, say he's changed too. The governor was asked in the article if he now regrets that historic stand.
The governor says, quote, "At the time I was really venting my anger at the federal government, but it's something I wish had not happened." Mr. Wallace says segregation was wrong in those days, but, quote, "a lot of us failed to see it." He's 64 years old now and is serving an unprecedented 4th term as governor. The article shows Mr. Wallace holding a black baby while on the '82 campaign trail. He courted the black support and won about 40% of it in the November election. Some say he's a new George Wallace. Others wonder if he's the old Wallace in sheep's clothing. Mr. Wallace says the latter isn't correct and says, quote, "I've never had any ill will toward anybody because of race or color." The article asked Mr. Wallace when his outlook on race changed. Was it gradual or sudden? Did the attempt on his life have anything to do with it? And why black people should believe the change is sincere and not motivated by political expediency. The reply, quote, "At my age, there is no reason for me to say one thing and mean another." Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
Process and grant application and more a day-to-day hands-on type of program. Applicants. In the past, we accepted applications.
I'm trying to get this legislation to where we can get off the hook.
So if they look at, let's say like Macon County Community Education Public Service Commission certificate, and what this program is designed to do is to utilize the transportation funds from the Second 18 program for providing transportation and leave the agency to utilize their funds for services rather than transportation. So we're trying to promote transportation and also promote expansion of services as a result of utilizing transportation funds.
there's some powers around, who got some powers and who don't have powers, to put this body in court at will.
But nowhere in Act 618 does it place the responsibility for fixing the provisions of Act 618. There was a question as to the... But you caused me to have to speak against what I am basically for, and that's an increase in police and fire salaries.
And people always label other persons on the council as a foe of this department or a foe of that department. To propose this to the council as a step toward unity in not only solving divisions within our community, but also solving what I perceive to be our need to reach a particular goal in getting good folks and keeping good folks.
Mr. President, this is the first public hearing we've had before this council. To come tonight and tell the public, okay, public, we want to hear from you. We want you.
In the past weeks, Alabama crops, livestock, and poultry have suffered under broiling heat and little or no rain. Farmers from all areas of the state are telling State Agricultural Commissioner Albert McDonald they need help. Commissioner McDonald has made his appeal on behalf of those farmers to President Reagan and Secretary of Agriculture John Block.
They have emergency feed programs, which feed can be sold at an affordable rate to the farmers to be fed to cattle and livestock who have no feed. They can the president can provide for the restructuring of disaster loans, which farmers have received in the past. They're not going to be able to pay this year. They're not going to be able to take out new loans unless they can restructure some of these old debt. All of these things can be accomplished by the secretary or the president by order of the president.
Commissioner McDonald says conditions are so serious that the government can't solve the problem. But he says tools are available to help farmers combat the disastrous conditions. The state director of the Farmers Home Administration, Dale Ritchie, says his office is gearing up to handle crop loss claims and to process emergency loans. In the meantime, Alabama farmers are hoping that a weather system approaching the state will bring rain and cooler temperatures. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
And on the top of the agenda for the Montgomery City Council tonight is the 1984 fiscal year budget. But there could be a move to postpone action on it. That's because at least 2 members of a special salary committee want more time to shift some members around and pay police officers and firefighters more. Susan Silvernail is at City Hall right now with this live report. Susan, what's expected to happen tonight?
Well, there's a last-minute meeting scheduled tonight for salary committee members to see if they can work out their disagreements about salary raises for police officers and firefighters. The salary committee breaks down 2-to-1 right now. 2 want to sweeten the pot for police officers and firefighters. 1 is satisfied with those salaries the way they are now. Both groups of employees have asked for starting salaries close to $15,000. But Councilman Bud Chambers says, in his words, he doesn't see a situation that needs any additional dollars. Mr. Chambers says there can't be much of a problem with salaries when there are so many people waiting to become policemen and firemen. But Council President Willie Peake and Councilman Donald Watkins think the bigger salaries are needed to recruit qualified people and keep experienced officers. And we'll find out in a few minutes if the committee can make a unified pitch to the council. That may tell us if police officers and firefighters can look for a salary increase above and beyond that contained in Mayor Fomer's budget proposal. Gina?
Thank you, Susan. That was Susan Silvernail live at Montgomery City Hall.
Since Bear Bryant's retirement and death, a lot has changed in Alabama. Bryant's practice field tower is gone, and so are 7 of his assistant coaches, the sports information director, and the radio play-by-play announcer. Ray Perkins has made many changes in the past 7 months. Players' names were taken off their jerseys, and the Tide will on occasion wear white helmets. But the big change will be on the field. Alabama fans have seen the wishbone for a dozen years. What will they see from Ray Perkins?
Well, he won't see the wishbone, but he'll see most anything else. We'll get into a multiple number of sets
We will move people around either by shifting or either by putting them in motion. That is for a reason. If we think it can give us an advantage from an offensive standpoint, we'll do it. So it'll be a combination of things that will certainly have some carryover. A lot of the things that we did with the Giants, a certain number of things that we did at San Diego when I was out there in '78. But it's a combination of things. We've just put everybody's head together on the offensive side of the ball, and we've come up with a playbook and a game plan.
Teachers say on a hot August day, even with a fan blowing, it can get as hot inside a classroom as outside on a football field. Some say when it's 100 degrees outside, it's 100 degrees inside, and sometimes even hotter.
You told me that men and monkey were both words that begin with an M.
It was relatively cool during Martha Rogers' morning reading class with first graders at Carver Elementary School. Carver is one of about 15 schools in the Montgomery County public school system that has no built-in air conditioning system. Most of the older schools weren't wired for central air, but some do have window units.
We're looking at the older schools to upgrade the condition of the buildings, especially in the area of window treatment, going from the old wooden windows maybe to aluminum windows. We've done that in some locations already, and it's has improved the efficiency.
Harris says the Board of Education does pay the electric bill for schools that purchase window air conditioners. Buying the units is left up to the school's PTA. They're expensive, costing about $1,000 for one unit. School officials say 2 are needed to comfortably air condition an old classroom. Many PTAs are opting to continue buying fans for cheaper comfort.
I just hope the weather will moderate very quickly. This is hard on teachers, it's hard on students, and hopefully the conditions will improve.
The newer schools, like Vaughn Road Elementary School, have a built-in air conditioning system. Officials say it does make a difference for a more suitable learning atmosphere, especially during August, when school is first opening during the peak time of the year. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News. During lunchtime at Vaughn Road Elementary School, students can enjoy their meals in air-conditioned comfort. Vaughn Road is one of the newest schools with a built-in central air conditioning system. But there's a big difference inside Lisa Power's second grade class. These youngsters aren't used to air-conditioned classrooms. In fact, there isn't air conditioning or even window units in most of the rooms in the schools. Teachers bring their own fans. The PTA buys some and very few window units. They're more expensive. School officials say one unit costs about $1,000 and say 2 are needed to comfortably air condition an old classroom.
Some 25 schools have gone a long way toward installing these units. The board is picking up the increase in the power bill. We're glad to see these schools get this.
Some school officials are permitting students to wear shorts to class during the peak season of the year. They say few parents are not letting their children go to schools that don't have air conditioning.
We've heard some parents complain to that extent that they would, but by and large, they're doing the best they can under the circumstances.
Weather forecasters are predicting cooler temperatures for the next few days. That'll be welcomed relief for students who do the best they can in an unair-conditioned classroom. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.